Welcome to Amanda's ACCA Audit Helpline. I put out the call to see what sort of questions you had in the lead up to the ACCA, AA and AAA exams coming up just in a couple of days. So I'm going to go through all of your questions, give you all the answers, and hopefully help you pass that exam. Let's get into it. What's up, audit fans? Welcome back to all of my regular subscribers. If you're new, hi! Welcome, my name is Amanda. I do love audit. And today what we're going to be doing is going through your questions. There are so many. I'm actually going to split this into two videos. So make sure that if you're not already, you're subscribed and you click the notification bell so that as soon as the second video comes out, which will be today, same day, you can get it as soon as possible and really start preparing yourself for the ACCA exam coming up just next week. So our first question here comes from Harvey, and Harvey says, should I enroll in a Masterclass course to improve my opportunities to pass the exam? And I would say here, there are two things you need to think about. You need to make sure you look at the price and that you look at the quality of that Masterclass program. You want to make sure that it's something that is really going to help you. Talk to other people who have done it before, see if they've got any hints. Did they think it was worthwhile? I know that you can look at reviews on websites, but see if you can find somebody real who's done that before. If it's an ACCA recommended one, then certainly you can be assured that the quality is okay because they do vet their providers. But you might get by with just the free resources that you can find on my website and lots of other websites online. So start out with free. See if you can compare against the syllabus. Are you feeling confident that you can do the past exam papers that are on the ACCA website? If you haven't seen those, check those out to make sure that, if you feel a little less confident, then it might be worth potentially going to a masterclass. But check out the price and the quality first. You don't want to get scammed. Now, our next question comes from Abanisha about how to apply knowledge in the exam paper. Now, when it comes to applying knowledge in the exam paper, there are a few tips that I have. The first one is read the question. All right, make sure you read the question, and then when you answer, use info from the question. All right, that is really important. If you're using information from the question to answer the question and you're applying your knowledge and you're applying the ISAs, then that is a much better approach than trying to memorize stuff and then just replicate it in the paper. Memorization in audit is a bad idea because the question will often have a very specific context. And if you can't answer within that context, then you're not going to get as many marks. So incorporating information from the question is going to be really useful. Now, another question that we have here is, will the examiner deduct spelling mistakes when we're typing the answers? I would think not. If you spell occurrence with the wrong number of R's or completeness with the wrong number of S's, I don't think that that's going to be a problem at all. So just make sure here that, when you're typing, you're using the right words, but I don't think spelling mistakes are going to be an issue. All right, so the next question comes from Kirushanth. I'm sorry if I've butchered your name there. And I think they mean, do I have any guesses about the part B of the exam? And look, I'm not in the prediction game. Trying to guess what the questions are is a method for disaster because you think that you're guessing something, you're going to focus study in those areas, and then the questions are going to be on something totally different, and then you're going to be in big trouble. So I would not recommend trying to guess the questions, but really have a good comprehensive understanding. And this is where it's important to understand deeply in terms of the content, and what you don't want to do is not memorize, okay? Because memorizing is where you're not going to be able to apply the context. As soon as the question changes from what you've memorized, your answers are just going to be completely wrong. So in terms of understanding, knowing why you're making these decisions. Why does the theory say this? Why does the standard say to do something? Why do I do something in a particular way? That's understanding deeply rather than surface learning, which is a lot about memorization. The next question that's come through was about whether I could take you through some of the objective questions or OTQs. Now, the objective questions only have one answer, so I don't really have time in this video to be able to go through them all. You can go through objective questions on the ACCA website. There's the practice exams as well, all the past exams, but really these only have one answer. So this means that these are, things that you should be knowing how to do from the auditing standards. They're facts, they're information. If you get OTQs that are multiple choice, then really, if you knew that the answer was B, for example, you should be able to clearly explain why it's not this one, not C, and not D. Okay, so being able to know, yes, this is the answer, and I can explain why the other ones are not the answer. It could be multiple choice, it could be writing something, it could be doing a calculation, but these are questions that only have one right answer. They're not about professional judgment, so they're not assessments about whether risk is low, medium, or high. They're going to be about very clear-cut things that you need to look at there. All right, the next question comes from Joe, which is about the difference between assurance and non-assurance engagements, and the key difference is about giving an opinion. So we know that in the assurance engagement, we do give an opinion. In a non-assurance engagement, we have no opinion, okay? And those are typically called agreed upon procedures. So if you're doing an audit and you're providing reasonable assurance, or you're doing a review and you're providing limited assurance, that key difference is the fact that you're providing an opinion about the entirety of the data based on your particular work. In agreed upon procedures, you might have a specific checklist and you're going to go, yep, they're doing this, not that one and that one, but you're not providing an opinion in that same way. Our next set of questions are about business risk. So Chibuzo says, I'd like to know the best approach for tackling questions on business risk. Joe asks, how do I identify and evaluate business risks? And Shraddha says, how do I identify audit risks? So this is where we need to be very, very clear on our terminology. Business risks are things that management have to deal with. These are the risks that are faced by management, and these are the things that are going to stop them from achieving their goals around making a certain profit, market share, growth of the company, etc. So these are management's risks, risks that are going to affect the ability of the organization to reach their goals. Then you have inherent risks, all right, of which a subset become significant risks under ISA 315. All right, and these are really places where we think there's higher risk of material misstatement. These are going to be accounting things where we think the accounting is more likely to be incorrect for some reason or some factor. Now, there is a crossover, right? You have business risks, and then you'll have inherent risks or significant risks, and sometimes there is a section that does have a crossover sort of effect, and where a business risk and an inherent risk, but a lot of times they're quite different. So make sure that you know what the question is asking. Is it asking you for a business risk so that you can understand management's motivation, or is it asking you for an inherent risk to help you strategically plan the audit and know where to apply more audit effort? I have a video on making sure that you can identify significant risks where I talk about the distinction between those two, and I'll link that in the description so that you can go to it and do some more revision, because this is a really common thing where I ask for inherent risks or significant risks, and about 60% of the time students give me business risks and I give them no marks. So it's really important to make sure that you know the distinction and that you're giving the markers or the examiners what they asked for in their question. All right, a great question here from Jemima about materiality. How do I know which one to use? And if it was an investment company, would I consider using total assets? How do I know what percentage to use? And that question was also followed up by Saratia about how do we know what the benchmark and the rule of thumb is. So definitely check out my 2 videos on materiality. I have one about the standard itself, and then I also have one that's more recent, just last week, about how do I set materiality in these current COVID global depression type times. So remember, you've got your base or your benchmark. All right, and that's typically net profit, revenue, total assets, total equity. And the traditional thinking is that this is the first one, then you move to this one, then you move to this one, then you move to this one, because what we're looking for is we're looking for a base that's relevant and stable. Okay, at the moment, nothing is stable. So check out my video on materiality where we do talk about how the general consensus is net profit and revenue amongst profit-seeking firms is still going to be their main benchmark at this point. In terms of using the rules of thumb or applying the percentage, you need to understand the grid. So make sure you go back to your ACCA materials to look at the grid that's been given to you. I'm going to show you a grid here. That's one that comes from a popular Australian textbook called Gay and Simnett. And that's written by the chair of the Australian Auditing Standards Board, Roger Simnett, and his co-author, Grant Gay. But you know, that's for our particular jurisdiction. Look at what is in your notes and know which percentage to use. Remember, if it is low risk, you want to use the higher percentage. And if it's high risk, you want to use the lower percentage. Now, what happens if you're in the middle and you're medium risk for the client, the overall risk of material misstatement is medium, then you're going to split the difference. So if it's 0.5% at the lower end and 1% at the higher end, you're going to use 0.75 there, okay? So go through and make sure that you know your table. And I would know the table just in case it's not given to you in the exam. I would give my students in undergraduate the table. I've seen in our professional exams that we would give students the table, but I'm not sure what is going to be in the ACCA exam. So just make sure you know how to apply the table and memorize the table that you've been given. But you know, the revenue and total assets figure almost tends to be quite similar there as well. The thing with materiality is to make sure that you also just make sure that you can justify why you're choosing that base. We will often accept a couple of different answers, but you need to be able to justify why. A message from Hamza, your videos are always helpful. Thank you, that's awesome. I hope that this one is really helpful to you as well. A question from Edward. I think this one came in from Instagram or Facebook, I think, about data analytics. Secret, top secret. We have always done data analytics in audit because analytical procedures are data analytics. All right, anytime that we are looking at trends, we're calculating ratios. So we can use analytical procedures and data analytics at the planning stage to help us identify unusual trends. We can use it as substantive work to help us look at trends in sales, what's happening in inventory movements, accounts receivable payments. Let's look at tracking cash flow. You could use Excel, you could use IDEA. If your organization has a subscription to something like MindBridge or Inflow, which are other types of analytical audit tools. Yes, we're seeing more sophisticated tools, but we've always done it. So it's not anything new. Any type of analytical procedure is a data analytic. The next question that Edward has is about ethical and professional issues related to integrated reporting. Now, the thing with integrated reporting is it's not just financial. So when it comes to the ethics side, you need to make sure that you're not doing any self-review. So there is a threat to independence from self-review if you're helping the client also prepare other parts of the reports. From a professional perspective, there is also the potential that you need to have due competence. So if you're only specialized in financial statement audits and you take on an integrated report and you don't have the expertise to provide assurance on the integrated report, then you're potentially not meeting the code of ethics requirements, which say you need to be competent and have the right skill set. And that doesn't matter whether you're a listed client or an unlisted client. The ethics code is the same for all accountants, no matter what type of firm that you're looking at there. Okay, another question here from Saratia, which says, what does nature, time, and extent mean? Well, nature is really easy. That's the type of procedure or audit evidence that you're going to collect, all right? Then you have time. Time is about when you're going to collect that audit evidence. Before the end of the year, after the end of the year, at the end of the year. And then extent is about how much. Okay, now think about back to ISA 500. ISA 500 says you must collect sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Okay, so sufficient is how much? Appropriate is the right type. So that means designing the procedures is going to be really, really important. Now, if revenue is very risky, let's look at the question here. If revenue is very risky, the control environment might be full of fraudsters, I'd want to test more substantively, so my extent will increase, yes, which is more sample sizes, lower materiality, but you might do multiple audit procedures. Collect 2 types of procedures to test the occurrence of revenue. Use 2 different procedures to collect evidence on the accuracy of revenue. So there's different ways that you can do that about the nature and the timing. So it means more procedures, different types, one with external data, one with internal data. So that's going to help you there. Question here from Anaya, how to write answers effectively and neatly when it comes to tests of controls and substantive procedures. I have 4 rules here, all right? These 4 rules are really, really easy. I've said these aren't from any textbook, I've developed these, but really, rule number 1, always use the right audit terminology. Are you vouching? Are you tracing? Are you reperforming? Are you doing an analytical procedure? Are you inspecting something? Are you confirming with someone? Number 2, use the client names of information. They call it a sales invoice, you call it a sales invoice. They call it a bill of lading, even though you think it's a packing slip, use their client terminology. That shows that you're integrating the case information into your response. The third thing is be really detailed. It needs to be detailed enough that somebody else could actually do this procedure step by step. Gather this document, get this document, compare these figures on this document. Here is what we're looking for. Include information about the sampling. What method? Are you stratifying? You might not necessarily include the sample size, but definitely the sample method. And then the fourth one, make sure that the procedure is fit for what you want to do. If you have an intangible asset, you cannot say, physically inspect the intangible asset. But well, that's definitely the wrong type of procedure. Make sure the procedure is fit for what you need to do. The key here is learning the process. Once you understand the 4 rules and you can practice and you understand the process of writing, combine that with your accounting IFRS information. There is no way that you can get this wrong in the exam if you learn the process of how to do it. Where students go wrong is they memorize specific examples. Examples for sales at a manufacturing firm. Examples for intangibles at a marketing firm. Examples of purchasing and accounts payable at a wholesaler rather than a retailer. And then as soon as you get a different type of case in the exam, you're like, oh my God, my examples don't match. I don't know what to do. If you're memorizing examples, then when you get a different case that is slightly different or a lot different than what you've covered, you are completely screwed. So you are 100% better off learning the process of how to do it, the mechanics behind how to do it, rather than memorizing stuff. Because if I asked for tests of controls over inventory and you gave me substantive tests over sales, you're getting 0 marks. So it's really important to understand that process there. Now, we have another question here from Darshini about identifying internal control deficiencies. This is where you need to learn to go line by line through a case description. Is this a control activity? Is this just information, or is this potentially a control weakness? Once you have your weaknesses, then what would be your recommendation? How could you improve the control? And in testing the control, you need to make sure that in testing the control, you're testing that the control actually works. Check out my video about the difference between substantive tests and tests of control to make sure that you're writing the correct one. All right, we're gonna take a break right here. I want you to let everything that we've talked about sink in, go away, make some notes. I've split this video into 2 because I want to make sure that I answer all of the questions in reasonable detail. Make sure that you're subscribed and you've turned the notification bell on so that you know when I release video number 2, which is going to be today. So stay safe, stay well, keep practicing, keep studying, and I'll chat to you really, really soon.